Hello, Cedar Village, and welcome back to another Village Torah with me, your host, Rabbi Drew. We are now on to Parashat Vayishlach. We're still very much in the book of Genesis, and this, once again, features a lot of Jacob. Jacob, so much Jacobness. It's very exciting. One of the more fascinating stories that takes place in this week's Torah portion is and enigmatic, I would say. It may not be a super well-known story, but it's certainly a fascinating one in which Jacob seems to wrestle with an angel. Unclear exactly how that works and what that means, but what is ultimately fascinating is that he gets a name change. His name is then changed to from Jacob or Yaakov to Yisrael or Israel. So that is the ultimate the result of that. But and I know we spoke about that last year, and I hope you enjoyed that video. That's also showing this weekend from last year about the name change from Jacob to Israel. But I wanted to, for this week, explore possibilities of what happened in Jacob's wrestling with this angel. So I'm going to bring it up now on screen. So we have in the 32nd chapter of the book of Genesis, really this story takes place in verses 22 through 33 of this strange scene that takes place. And I will read it for us. And so the gift went on ahead while Jacob remained in camp that night. That same night, Jacob arose and, taking his 2 wives, his 2 maidservants, and his 11 children, he crossed the ford of the Yabbok. After taking them across the stream, he sent across all of his possessions. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn. We're going to get back to that is really going to be the key sentence that we're going to focus in on. But before we get back to that, I wanted to read the rest of this to give us a better context for what is happening. When he saw that he had not prevailed against him, again, he wrenched Jacob's hip at its socket. It would seem that even though, by the way, we have a whole bunch of he and he, it would, if I had to interject what the pronouns here, if we could translate the pronouns, it would be that when this man, this angel, saw that he had not prevailed against Jacob, he wrenched Jacob. Although I do want to point out, it's actually quite vague. He wrenched Jacob's hip at its socket so that the socket of his hip was strained as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for dawn is breaking." And he answered, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Said the other, "What is your name?" He replied, "Jacob." Said he, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with beings divine and human, and have prevailed." Jacob asked, "Pray tell me your name." But he said, "You must not ask my name." And he took leave of him there. So Jacob named the place Peniel, meaning I have seen a divine being face to face, yet my life has been preserved. The sun rose upon him as he passed Peniel, limping on his hip. That is why the children of Israel to this day do not eat the thigh muscle that is on the socket of the hip, since Jacob's hip socket was wrenched at the thigh muscle. There is clearly a lot going on, and I'm not even going to talk about this practice that was clearly at some time in the biblical the Jews just were not eating this. They were just not eating this aspect of the cow. It's called the Gid Hanasheh. It's this Gid Hanasheh. That's the Hebrew for this thigh muscle, the socket that we still do not eat. It's not considered to be kosher. So clearly we have this eating practice, this being hit on the hip. One thing, though, you may have caught during my reading of the story was trying to figure out the pronouns. He and him and him and he, who's who, which is which. It's not unconfusing, as you can well imagine. But I actually think that that's part of the fascination with this story, is that there's a lot of not being clear. Who is what and what is going on? Now, we do have a little bit of a clue, right? Because we end up seeing that he says, hearing that he says, well, actually, you have striven with beings divine and human. and have prevailed. And ultimately, he says he calls the place Peniel because which technically literally translates to face of God or God's face. And the reason that he calls this place God's face is because I've seen a divine being face to face, yet my life has been preserved. Now, it's strange. How does he know? Right? How does he know that this is a divine being? Because after all, this we don't see anywhere really within this story that this is necessarily some sort of a divine being, right? The story actually describes, the Torah text actually describes him as a man. There was a man there who wrestled with him, but we don't know that this was necessarily a divine being. So why would Jacob say that? It's unclear, right? It described as a man in the text, but he also says I've been striven with, this is somehow God's face. So what's going on? Now, one possibility that we could understand is literally it's just some man. Maybe we take the text totally literally on the surface of it and just understand it. This is some random guy. Now, of course, there's a lot of questions that could arise. Why would some random guy want to fight Jacob? Right? And it's not as if Jacob has a lot of possessions here. I mean, what could this man really seek to gain or otherwise benefit from fighting and probably killing Jacob? Now, we do know, I mean, the whole story was set up because Jacob left some things there. Okay, but it doesn't sound like it would be lucrative to beat Jacob up and steal these things. It doesn't seem like a lot. So maybe you know what? It literally could, if we take the surface read of the text, it could just be some random guy, maybe some random guy who's looking to beat someone else up. And it just happens to be Jacob, because after all, the text does describe Jacob as being alone. And since Jacob's alone, no one else is around, that makes him vulnerable. And this man preys upon his vulnerability, taking advantage of the situation. But again, unclear why he would seek to beat him up or otherwise kill him. So that would be strange. And also, why would he seek to why would Jacob describe him as somehow God having intervened or otherwise have been involved? So that certainly is a strange aspect of this story. Another possibility is, who knows, maybe it was an angel. Could be. Now, that's a little strange because, again, we saw a man, but you know what? We've had in the text in Genesis, men visiting people, and they appear as men, but they actually turn out to be angels. So that could be. Now, I'm going to bring this up. Now, the rabbis have a very specific angel in mind. This is what the rabbis, one rabbi, not all the rabbis, but this is one rabbi in Bereshit Rabbah, in Genesis Rabbah. Rabbi Chama, son of Rabbi Hanina, said it was the ministering angel of Esav. Now that's an interesting one. And that is what is meant when he said to them, for this have I seen your face as I saw the face of God, and you have accepted me. And before going on, what's fascinating about this, I don't know a whole lot about ministering angels of anybody in particular, but it was somehow, I guess, I don't know, an angel that looks out for Esav. And this was, again, before Jacob encounters Esav. So this was on the leading up to that. And this, maybe this ministering angel of Esav was seeking to hurt him, because Esav was otherwise, he was looking for revenge or something. Maybe that's why, I don't know. And it's also strange why he would be called a man, but that could go also back to how we have seen in the book of Genesis, man and angel being sort of interchangeably used, that here that's what is being described. Now, Rabbi Chama, son of Hanina, goes on with an interesting parable. He says, there is a parable about an athlete that got up and wrestled with the son of a king. He lifted his eyes and he saw that the king was standing behind him, and so he fell to the ground in front of the son. That is what is meant by that which is written, and he saw that he could not overcome him. It's an interesting parable. Who knows, maybe, and we also have to wonder, for Rabbi Chama bar Hanina, when he's creating this when he's suggesting this answer, does he understand the Genesis text to be talking about a ministering angel that is basically an independent angelic entity that is looking out for Esav? So seeking to do damage, sort of peremptory damage to Jacob prior to their encounter, or maybe, and again, I don't know Rebbe Chama Bar Chanina's views on angels and how they work, but maybe there was a communication between Esav and his ministering angel, directing his ministering angel to go out and seek harm against Jacob. That's unclear about Rebbe Chama Bar Chanina's sort of views on how angels work, but it's an interesting, is it doing it on account of him or not? Okay, so that's an interesting perspective, that it could be a ministering angel, and why stop there? So we have later medieval commentators. So we have Rashbam, who is a grandson of Rashi. We have discussed Rashi here before, and he says it was an angel. It was an angel engaged him in a physical fight, his purpose being to prevent Jacob from fleeing. Only in this way could God's promise to Jacob that Esau would not harm him be fulfilled. Okay, that's a really fascinating reason that also has to do with Esav, but here it's just an angel. Okay, and now, as opposed to Rebbe Chama Bar Chanina, who is, I think he lived in the 3rd, possibly 4th century of the Common Era. So as opposed to his suggestion that it was this ministering angel that is looking out for Esav's best interests, here Rashbam suggests no, it was just an angel that was really doing this almost, so to speak, on behalf of God, right? In this way, could God's promise to Jacob that Esau would not harm him be fulfilled? Definitely an interesting perspective. And we see some other similar suggestions here by also medieval biblical commentators. We have Radak, Rabbi David Kimchi. He says, what is this ish? A man, right? Literally a man. He says, no, it's the same type of ish as in Joshua chapter 5. It's an angel. And this is the angel Gabriel. So now, again, a very specific angel described as ish par excellence in Daniel chapter 9. The reason why, now he goes on. Now he specifically suggests why they're being called this. Why not just say angel in the text? The text does describe angels in the book of Genesis. So why here is it being referenced as a man? The reason why these angels are called Ish is because they appear to the people with whom they converse in human guise. The types of angels who speak with man are referred to as Ish, as literally just a man, as they appear either in a vision or while the person to whom they appear is fully awake. God had sent this angel to Jacob to strengthen his courage, not to fear Esau. If Jacob could prevail over an angel, surely he had no reason to be afraid of an encounter with someone like Esau. The fact that the struggle lasted until daybreak was an allusion to Jacob that after a period of night, problems, adversity, there would come a period of light, peace, and prosperity coupled with security. So here again, we have either a general angel or here specifically Gabriel. And the reason they're described as men, as people, is because that's how they seem. They look like just another person. Now, one final medieval commentator, again, the man is an angel who has assumed the form of a human being. The angel, okay, so now Chizkuni seem to be taken from Rabbi Chama Bar Chanina that it was specifically Esau's ministering angel, and it had come to prevent Jacob from escaping from Esau. Okay, so these are some possibilities. So once the rabbi started introducing, they're angels, right? Either a general angel or maybe a very specific ministering angel looking out for Esau's best interests. Another possibility, and this one is really so whether we've talked about just the literal biblical, just the literal surface read, one so far is that it is just some random man, just some random guy. Maybe he's just fixing for a fight, or who knows, maybe he wants to seal some of these jars that could be of some material or other financial benefit for this totally random person that has nothing to do with Jacob. Another possibility, we saw Rabbi Chama Bar Chanina in the Midrash suggesting it's this ministering angel of Esau, which is so looking out for Esau's best interests. Another that we've seen in the medieval biblical commentators, Rashbam and Radak, suggesting actually it was just some random angel and not necessarily looking out for Esau's interests, but really trying to sort of guard or otherwise protect a promise that God had made to Jacob. And you know what? Here's another possibility. Why not Esau himself? Or even it could be a scout. If why, going back to the biblical text itself, maybe it's not just some random guy. What if it's a scout from Esau's camp, right? So Esau might have gotten wind, or someone in his camp might have gotten wind or heard that Jacob was approaching and sought out and sent out scouts. And so in so doing, this scout who is on Team Esau was seeking to damage or otherwise hurt Jacob. So that's another possibility. One final possibility, which I find fascinating, I think a lot of people have really found powerful, especially in considering psychological things going on, is that maybe it was just Jacob himself, right? When we think back to the text, that it was this inner struggle. So it says that Jacob was left all by himself. He was just by himself. What if we understood that extremely literally? It's not just he was by himself and then some other man approached him and fought with him, but it's that he was left alone and he fought with a man being himself. So he fought against himself. And when we have all of those masculine pronouns, he and him and him and he, maybe what it's pointing up is this is all about Jacob, that Jacob was still left alone. Jacob was all alone by himself, wrestling himself. Now, it's unclear exactly according to that perspective why he would say, oh, I can't prevail in this fight, therefore I'm going to strike the thigh. That part of the story is unclear. And then also why would he say, don't, like, I'm not going to give you my name. I'm not going to, like, the whole naming piece, like, what's your name? Oh, Jacob. Oh, you're not going to be called Jacob anymore. What's your name? Oh, I can't tell you. Right. So that's a little, that's definitely a weakness in that perspective of the possibility of who this person with whom Jacob was wrestling, who was fighting him. So that's unclear, but it does make a really fascinating interpretation, right? What if he just wrestled himself and he was fighting with himself? But clearly this was, no matter what happens, the ultimate outcome is that somehow Jacob's been changed, and not just because he comes out with a limp. Okay, so he's physically changed. Yes, that's true. He is physically changed for the worse, but at the same time, it almost as if he understands his own self, his own identity in a different fashion. Because before, his name was Jacob, which has, last week we talked about him being a trickster, but the name definitely has connotations of trickiness. And changing the name to Yisrael, someone who's fought with man and God, is of something very different. It's someone who, even though God's in their life, they're also fighting at the same time. They're wrestling with God. And so whether, one possibility we didn't discuss is that Jacob is wrestling with literally God. Now that no one says, which is fascinating. So in any event, whether the person with whom this person with whom Jacob was wrestling was himself, whether it was another person, a random person, whether it was someone from Esau's camp, maybe an advanced scout, or maybe it was an angel, whether a general angel, or maybe specifically a ministering angel of Esau. So that's a handful of different interpretive possibilities we could consider when looking at this text, when thinking about it. And it certainly raises some interesting possibilities whenever we look at this story. So I hope this discussion of interpretive possibilities with this story is helpful in considering what is going on with this story. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your staying tuned. Before we go, I want to just acknowledge and say all Jewish life and programming here at Cedar Village are financially supported through the Jewish Home of Cincinnati. So thank you. And with that, I want to wish everybody Shabbat Shalom.